Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. If you're hanging out with us, make sure to hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Takes just a second, helps your boys out a ton. We're back for UFC Vegas 24 middleweight showdown between ex-champ Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum. An excellent night of fights, man.
Yeah, man, an exciting fight we finally get to see after it falling apart all the way back at UFC 234. We're looking to keep the ball rolling after just going positive on our last event. You know, our two biggest plays on Joe Selecki and Dao and Jung hit with ease. Kind of got bought into the hype surrounding Mike Perry and the Baja Mendez. Really didn't live up to the hype and kind of just looked like a punching bag out there. This time we have 13 fights on this week's card, and we'll go ahead and jump right into it. I think we've got a couple of pretty good reads that we're looking forward to playing. Starting off the card, we have Austin Hubbard, who's 12-5, taking on Dakota Harry Bush, who's a late notice replacement. Austin Hubbard, as I looked around on the internet, very highly regarded by his coaches and training partners. He's out there at Team Elevation and actually lives with Neil Magny and has apparently, kind of taken Hubbard under his wing and has become a mentor to him, which I actually like hearing. Neil Magny's got the fight IQ that I think that Hubbard could really learn from. Hubbard, super high, only really lost to the super high level grapplers of the division and truly some really tough matchups. I think it's just 155 as a whole. It's just a tough division to kind of get the ball rolling. Compared to the guys that he has been matched up with, though, I think Dakota Bush is kind of a gift, if I'm being completely honest. I think Dakota will likely come in here and try to test the wrestling of Hubbard, considering the success that his opponents have had in the past. That being said, I don't think that Dakota Bush has really seen the level that Hubbard's on just yet. Bush's record, half of his wins are by submission, 4 of them. And in the tape study that I was able to see, it looks like he wants to establish that low calf kick early. And when he is on top, he does have solid pressure and can slice through your guard if you're not well-versed on the ground. I think that Hubbard will be able to stay on the feet and will ultimately punish him. I'm actually looking to play Austin Hubbard inside the distance, but the fight doesn't go the distance. Sitting at plus money is my favorite play on this fight. What about you?
Yeah, man, for sure. I definitely see Austin Hubbard probably winning this fight. Dakota Bush stepping in for Natan Levy there. So a guy that I had already had an early play on there, just another horrible matchup there for Austin Hubbard. And, I joked with you about, does he have RDA's manager? Because it's just been horrible matchmaking from the get-go for this guy. He's got an obvious weakness in grappling, and they match him up with, black belts like Dabi Holmos, Joe Selecki, Olympic wrestlers, Marco Madsen, and even, Max Roshkoff before he quit had, a ton of success with the wrestling in round 1. But on the feet, he's real smooth. He doesn't telegraph a whole lot of things. He throws in good combination, and he's developed a good knee up the middle to stop some of those takedowns. Talked about Team Elevation. The guy can easily go 15 minutes there. In the past, 6 fights, you're right, in lightweight, it's a hard division to gain, to climb through. He's alternated wins and losses in his last 6, but he's never lost 2 in a row throughout his 17-fight career. I don't expect him to lose this one here either. On the side of Bush, been fighting in LFA for majority of his pro career. He's seen some good talent through there. One of his decision losses come to Jalil Willis, which is a guy I really wanted the UFC to get, but ends up in Bellator there. Activity-wise, though, it's on Bush's side here. Like his 2-fight win streak, we've actually seen him fight 2 times since we've seen Austin Hubbard there in the cage. You're right, man. Hard calf kick at range. He looks to back you up where he does his best work up against the cage. Looks to set up that rear naked choke with the ground and pound. But if he can't get any of that going, I see it much being like the Max fight where Austin, gets those combinations and stuff going on the feet. I like Austin Hubbard to win this one as well.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we start off the night both agreeing on one. I like that.
For sure, man. We move to our bantamweight division where we see Tony Gravely, who is 20-6, taking on Anthony Birchak, who is 15-7. And Tony Gravely is a guy that I see real talent in, man. He's, not ever going to touch a belt by no means. I don't have a problem saying that. But the dude, he shows me real things that I like. He trains out of American Top Team at 29 years old. This guy's got 26 pro fights already. And it's been a tough road to the octagon. He has this rep of kind of getting submitted real easily. But it's by high-level grapplers, man. Manny Bermudez, Patchy Mix is a Bellator title challenger. He went to war with Brett Johns. He took Merab to a decision. Hard road to the UFC, man, that I think has shaped him into the fighter, made him a much better fighter today. relentless wrestling, man, really looks to wear on you. Won 8 of his last 9. The split over Geraldo de Freitas should have been a unanimous decision there. Really dominated with the wrestling like most fights. On the side of Birchak, is the biggest underdog on the card, and rightfully so, in my opinion. This is his second UFC stint. 2-5 in the first one after being cut after, Thomas Almeida brutally finished him. He's 0-3 and risen, and I honestly thought probably that would have been the end of the fighting career, but somehow reps off a couple more wins and gets a short notice, comeback fight with Gustavo Lopez, but doesn't go as planned, dropped, submitted early. And be honest with you, Gustavo Lopez is not some high-level bantamweight by no means here. I think Anthony Birchak is in way over his head, and Tony Gravely is, like you could say, like my lock of the night, man. I think he's an excellent parlay piece anywhere you want to place him.
Yeah, man. Gravely is kind of we're on the same page. He's pretty much as close of a lock as you can get. Like you said, in that De Freitas fight, it kind of proved to where the strength was the biggest factor in that fight. It seemed like anytime De Freitas tried to stop the takedown, it was like Gravely could just push through it with just being a little bit stronger than him. Like you said, you can't really knock Gravely for any of his losses, all of those guys being top-level guys. And training at ATT and being under 30 years old, I got to think that he's improving every single fight. Right now, his inside the distance line is sitting at -105, which I think is playable. He hasn't really shown that complete aggression trying to get the fight finished, but I do think that he's in a spot right here where this guy's set up to be a relatively easy win in his book. And if he wants to go for that finish, I think that'll be open with somebody like Birchak. Like you said, that Gustavo Lopez fight, he made Gustavo Lopez look like a world beater out there, and that's not something that you want to do. It seemed like Lopez was able to take him down whenever, and with Gravely's wrestling heavy attack, I think that'll be something that he could go to at any point in time. Not to mention on the feet, Birchak is just a little bit too hittable for my liking. Doesn't really have that good head movement. That being said, he is a quick starter, and although I like the Gravely inside the distance, I'd be curious to see what the fight doesn't go the distances, and that's at -180. Not crazy playable. I'm not crazy about that. The under 2.5 at -140 is a little bit better, but this one, like I said, I lean Gravely. So if we're gonna play him, I'm fine with making him a parlay piece. But if you just want to play him straight up, I think the inside the distance is the way to go.
Absolutely, man. Glad to see we're off on no disagreements, right off the bat here.
Love it. Moving on, we go to the women's bantamweight division where we see Zarah Fairn, who's 6-4, taking on Josie Nunes, who's 7-1. Zarah Fairn, doing tape study, she has the build of somebody who I think could have potential as a fighter, but realistically, this is a pretty low level fight all around. Her striking is Cindy Dandois-esque. She really has that chin right up in the air, straight punches, but they don't have any power behind them at all. And from what I can see, you can pretty much take her down at will. Now, when you go to Josie Nunes, I was hoping to see something better in her tape study, but she is equally as easy to take down and doesn't show much potential on the feet. I kind of compared her to Vanessa Mello as far as her build, but being only 5'2" and 135 pounds, like this isn't the division for her. Mm-hmm. This is Zara's first time moving down a division, which is at 5'8", I think that's her biggest advantage coming into this one, and she's going to have a clear size advantage over Nunes. But from what I can tell, Nunes does at least tuck her chin whenever she throws her punches. And I think ultimately, if this fight stays on the feet, Nunes will get the more damaging strikes in this matchup, and I think that'll carry her into a decision win. What are you thinking about this fight?
Yeah, man, this is an extremely, extremely low-level fight here. In tape study, especially UFC fights for Zarah, quite painful there, man. But signed off of a 2-year hiatus of mixed martial arts and signed right into the featherweight division where she was fed to the last 2 title challengers in that division there, in Felicia Spencer and Megan Anderson. Like you said, able to take her down and really expose a big hole in her game, one that a lot of opponents will probably look to, exploit going forward as well. But she's taken a year off, man. She's worked on her BJJ there. She's in great shape. She fights real long. I think she's going to have a massive advantage on the feet if she can keep her range. I just expect a much better showing. How could you not from her first two UFC outings there? She's also she's undefeated at 135. Every single one of her four losses are at 145 pounds or higher. And she's out there fighting girls even before the UFC with at least 10 fights on their records, not, with Josie Nunes over there with 2 and 3 fight, opponents' records. She's riding a 6-fight win streak over absolute garbage cans. The Brazilian regional scene is, never something that lives up to what it's supposed to there. Talia Santos is on there for a resume. Talia Santos pretty much ran through her from start to finish. At range, bro, you're right. Super hard kick. She swings the left hand from southpaw, but nothing's really set up there. And she's going to have to close a whole bunch of distance here. So, looking through the odds all week and seeing Zarah as a dog, it wasn't really shocking to me. Now I expect to see that. But when I start to break this fight down and realize she's going to have a 6-inch reach, she's dabbled with much higher competition of girls. I think this line's going to flip come fight night, especially when people, who don't really pay attention to this fight, see these girls square off come the weigh-ins. I think this line flips, man, and I think I'm probably going to try to play Zarah before she gets to play the favorite here, because I think she is the favorite, and I think the odds makers got it wrong.
Man, I think both of us are just kind of taking stabs in the dark, and come fight night, we might both regret either lean that we have on these girls, you know?
And you'll never see the podcast reputation put on one of these girls right here.
Not at all. This is strictly degenerate stuff right here.
Now we move on to the men's middleweight division, where I think we're going to see a play from us, man. We have Gerald Meerschaert, who's 31-14, taking on Bartosz Fabinski, who's 15-4. Meerschaert is, looking to leave a different taste in people's mouth from his last performance. He was, he lost to Chimaev. He was walked down, dusted in under 20 seconds with the first punch. And it's quite the same the fight before that. Ian Heinisch's first real overhand right that he landed, it put him down. He was able to put him away. And from what I see, I think that's the body, that's the body's way of telling him he should hang it up here, man. He's lost 6 of his last 10. He came as an underdog in his last 9 fights. And he's really just become the sub or buzz type of fighter with 23 of his 31 wins by sub. Man, training out of Rufus Sport, you'll hear it every time I break down a fighter from there. That gym is dying. All their good talent is either aging, moving the gym, and they had young guys like Brendan Allen, but you see him down at Sanford MMA and stuff now. That the gym's just not got a lot left. On the side of Fabinski, he's been in the UFC since 2015, sporting that 4-2 record there, but most recently, we've only gotten to see him here because he was coming off a 3.5-year layoff before that Darren Stewart fight and looked good despite that massive layoff. He used to be a welterweight, so, in his next fight with Andre Munoz, who was a big middleweight, he was able to actually take him down. The game plan was going according to plan, and he was just submitted by a high-level black belt out of guard there, which kind of worries me, because 3 of his 4 losses are by sub and 23 of Gerald's wins are by sub, but Gerald's got to come out here and just prove me wrong, man, because at this point, I think he's shot, and at a minus 130, I'm looking to play Fabinski, man. What about you?
Yeah, this is, you talked about Gravely being your lock of the night. Fabinski's kind of mine, man. I really do think that his wrestling and top pressure will be the story of the night in this matchup. Meerschaert, I looked back on the majority of his wins, and I really can't find anybody noteworthy. It seems like anytime he does take that step up in competition, it really doesn't pan out. And it doesn't even have to be a huge step up in competition. Like, we're talking about the Ian Heinisches, the Eric Anders, and that's somebody who I think is comparable to Bartosz Fabinski in his MMA, abilities. Like you said, with Gerald Meerschaert having 45 fights under his belt, being only 33 years old, I do think that he has the more wear and tear on him, even though Fabinski is the older fighter. Fabinski has that style where he doesn't take a lot of damage when he fights, or at least attempts not to. And you talked about his last 2 losses coming from submission. That is, like you said, of course, something that you worry about with Meerschaert, but I do think that this will be somewhat of a Vince Pichel, Jim Miller situation where you're just going to have somebody who's a little bit too heavy on top, a little bit too dominant in the wrestling aspect of the game, that the jiu-jitsu isn't going to be able to be showcased here. Fabinski, he averages over 7 takedowns per 15 minutes and a 70% accuracy. I think that it's going to be a no-brainer that Meerschaert winds up on his back eventually on this fight. Meerschaert is even known to kind of accept that position willingly. I truly think that this one will be a pretty easy win for Fabinski, somewhat similar to the Joe Selecki fight last weekend. I think he could just lay in top position and ride this one out into a decision win.
Yeah, man. Gerald Meerschaert, really not impressive to me. And southpaw, of course, he's got a good left hand, a good body kick, but all those strikes come extremely, extremely slow. And like Sam Alvey tends to put his back up against the cage. And, man, Fabinski, that's where he lives, man. He's got such great chain wrestling against the cage. And we see this fight going the exact same way, which makes me even more confident to bet it, man. I see Fabinski just riding out top pressure. He could get to finish with ground and pound, but like I said, like you said, I think it's just a wrestle fuck to decision, man.
Yeah, and right now he's sitting at like a -130, -135, and I think that's super playable. I don't expect us to get better odds as the week goes on, so if I personally will be locking this in now.
Absolutely, man. I agree with you.
Moving all the way down to the women's strawweight division, we have Jessica Penne, who's 12-5, taking on Lupita Godinez, who's 5-0. Jessica Penne, 4 years and 4 canceled bouts later, and we finally get to see her return to the octagon. On that 3-fight losing streak, and at 38 years old, I really do think that she could get hurt bad by this 27-year-old killer standing across from her. Lupita, she's a very strong, very athletically built, kind of built like Claudia Gadelha, just abs and traps and everything. And she fights mean, She fights like she's out there mad at somebody. And coming off that Vanessa Demopoulos fight, that was a tough 5-round war that she went in and really just whooped up on Demopoulos for all 5 of those rounds. Showed that she had a great gas tank. And, watching some of her tape study in the past, she throws girls around. She utilizes that strength. Penne, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and will likely look to clinch and throw those knees up the middle that she likes on this smaller fighter who's only 5'2". Penne, she does have good timing on her takedown attempts, but struggles to hold down opponents, and especially against somebody like Lupita who's so strong. I doubt that if she is able to get it to the ground, that she's going to be able to hold somebody like Lupita down. And if this stays up on the feet, I think Lupita really has got this locked up. I know right before we started this breakdown, we talked about Lupita inside the distance sitting at +350. That's something that I really do think has some value here, even though Lupita is making her debut here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, man, we see this fight the same way. Penne there trying to get back into the octagon at 38 years old now. Not only the injuries, but just USADA suspensions. And there's articles out there, man, you got to read about, because she's doing some shady stuff trying to avoid some of those suspensions and stuff. It's a pretty interesting read there. But, at 5'5", she got a good frame for the division despite being Invicta's atomweight champ before coming to the UFC. And the list of competition she's fought, it is much better. But, we got to be honest, she didn't put up much of a fight to Joanna or Andrade. They beat the brakes off of her. And then a loss to Danielle Taylor really shows you where she sits at in the division, even prior to the layoff, the USADA issues. But training with Angela Hill, man, she looks in good shape. She got a lot of kicks to her game there, but she does not move her head whatsoever. And I think she's got a much, much harder test than Hannah Goldie standing in front of her now. A lot of people think they are throwing her to the wolves with this one. Lupita, despite being 5-0, she's also got a 9-fight amateur record. And, I mean, she just busted Vanessa up for straight 25 minutes, man. The boxing was so crisp. Reminded me of a lot of Vivian Araujo there. Just a ton of pressure, a lot of pop on her shots. These girls they're just at 2 different points in their career right now. And Lupi is a girl that I really, really favor here. I referenced the Alexis Davis-Sabina Mazo fight when this one brings up. You had Alexis Davis, who was coming off a massive layoff, but obviously had an advantage on the mat here and was able to just lay on top of Sabina Mazo for 15 minutes. I'd hate to see that happen here, but, I was favoring Hannah Goldie against Jessica Penne, so I'm most definitely favoring Lupita here, and I think she very well has a chance to put, Penne out on the feet, much like Joanna Andrade did, man.
Yeah, I love that play, and especially considering it's those type of odds at +350, we can just dabble on that and really get a good payout.
For sure, man. We jump up quite a bit to maybe the public's most exciting fight of the night. We see Alexander Romanov, who's 13-0, taking on Juan Espino, who is 10-1. Romanov, he's one of those few heavyweight prospects right now that's got a lot of steam and hype behind him. And UFC's been quite generous with his matchups, giving him Roque Martinez, Rogerio de Lima, and he's just an absolute force. He does have the wrestling background, but he relies on a lot of strength and just brute force to get a lot of things done, much like his forearm choke that he's done 3 or 4 times. But don't be shocked. He will shoot a fast double leg on you, and when he gets the body lock, you're going for a ride. What you like about Romanov is he's finished all 13 wins, splitting them up 8 by submission, 5 by TKO. He's shown he's pretty well rounded, and despite a lot of these coming in early in round 1, I see the holes as the fight progresses, but it is nice to see that in round 3 he does have 2 finishes, and the gas tank was still there to get the finish come late in the fight. On the side of Juan Espino, man, winner of Ultimate Fighter, but then a 2-year layoff. A lot of guys forgot about him, but he comes back and looks sensational against Jeff Hughes. But 0-3 in the UFC, Jeff Hughes is not someone to really write home about. And you want to talk about pointless seasons of the Ultimate Fighter, it doesn't get any more pointless than that season of the heavy hitters with women's featherweights, where every one of them are now bantamweights. And who did Juan Espino beat on that show? Josh Parisian, Ben Sassoli, Maurice Green. He beats Justin Frazier in the finale, and none of these guys have panned out to anything. You can't knock him for his one loss to Vitaly Benkov, who's 22-1 at this point. It's just a tricky fight, in my opinion, man, because these guys are so used to being the offensive grapplers. We've not seen either one of them have to get up from their back, and I think both of them don't really have the cardio to be the defensive wrestler. Super interesting. I'm going to lean with the younger side in the undefeated Romanov, man, but I think you might see it a little different.
Yeah, here's our first disagreement of the night. First off, I'd like to say I don't know why the UFC is doing this to us. I think that both these guys I'd like to see have far better matchups than
take on
right
more
now.
Rokies, take on more Maurice Greens, build the stock more.
Right. And I've heard an argument that, maybe the UFC is trying to weed out the grapplers of the heavyweight division and maybe kind of, push the better of the two into that upper echelon of the division. With Romanov, he really does live up to that King Kong nickname. Like, he absolutely beats people down. And like you said, kind of has those schoolyard submissions that you're putting your little brother in whenever they're growing up. It's unorthodox and very strongman type submissions that you see. And, I know you touched on the gas tank, him kind of getting that 3rd round finish, but man, after that Roque Martinez fight, he was sucking wind after that first round. I was a little worried, and he proved me wrong. But somebody like Espino, who, like you said, kind of has that similar style with the wrestling heavy attack, but also the physical attributes that matches Romanov pretty well, with an 80-inch reach and being an inch taller than Romanov. I think this will be the first time that Romanov is actually in there with somebody who, not only is his weight, close enough to his weight, but also his size. Roque Martinez was more than enough close to Romanov's weight, but just didn't really have that athletic ability that I think Espino has. If this fight does become, 2 grapplers that end up on the feet and it just be a stand-up war, I think Espino has the edge here, having that 80-inch reach. And from what I have seen in the limited amount of tape, he can hide behind that jab. And it's nice to know that he at least can utilize that reach advantage that he has, which is why I like leaning towards him, and getting him at plus money is enough for me to enough for me to play him. It's one of those ones where I'll be more than happy to sit back and just kind of enjoy the violence here. But if I am going to make a play, I'll definitely take the underdog in Espino, considering I think this is a coin flip type of fight.
Yeah, for real. He's light on the feet, man. He trains out of a good team, an American Top Team, where he's surrounded with really good heavyweights. He's by far the more decorated grappler of the two, and it's still, to me, they're both unproven. And if I can get guys who one's 10 years younger than the other, it's really hard for me. The age is going to catch up to him at one point, and his cardio is not proven to us either, but it is a coin flip, man. I think this is going to be the official challenge. I know we're having to do this one via Zoom, but we're thinking about making this one a challenge. There's also one that we're all, later on in the card that we're looking at as well, but looking to make an official challenge to break out the casual cap next week. Am I correct?
Yes, I like that. And I think this one's a good one to do it just because it is complete violence. And yeah, why not? Why not make it a heavyweight fight that the challenge is on?
Feel you, man.
Yet another women's fight. We got Tracy or Cortez, who's 8-1, taking on 7-3 Justine Kish. Cortez, her wins in the UFC, or her recent wins against Agapova, Blanchfield, Vanessa Mello, Stephanie Eggers, those are all actually kind of aging well. And as Cortez moves along, being only 27 years old, I do think that she's improving every single time that we've seen her out. She does have that relentless takedown pressure and has shown to have really good strength inside the clinch, something that Stephanie Eggers had zero answer for in her fight. Cortez, she's good about making you pay for lazy kicks or lazy strikes. She's good about catching your kicks or getting that body lock takedown. And until she fights like a high level striker that's going to be able to keep her at distance, I'm okay with betting Cortez as she moves forward in her career. Kish, 1-3 in her last four with her most recent loss to Sabino Mazo. Kish is averaging about one fight a year, and I don't really love where her career's heading at this point in time. She's only 32 years old, but I haven't seen much improvement fight to fight like I have seen in Cortez. I looked at that Herrig fight, and that was one that I can really draw a lot of comparisons to Cortez's style of fighting. Herrig, constant pressure, constantly was able to get that body lock takedown exactly like Cortez likes, and really, beat the shit out of her that fight. I do think that Kish throws a little bit harder than anybody that Cortez has seen. So I will be curious to see how fast Cortez tries to close that distance. But as far as I'm concerned, I think Cortez is a playable person on this card. I mean, it's hard to say that considering she's over a 2-1 favorite and she's a woman, but I do think stylistically this is her fight to lose right here.
Couldn't agree more with you, man. She's one of the UFC's gems right now. Not only, showing great potential, but real easy on the eyes. Brother was also a really good fighter, dreamed of being in the UFC. He passed away, and it's really give Tracy the motivation to fight. The fire is always going to be there for her. You touched on the 4 good names that she has fought. Trains at a fight ready in Arizona there, where she's in great shape. She gets the wrestling in with Henry Cejudo. And you hit it spot on, man. She looks better each time she steps in that octagon. She got a good right hand, good knee up the middle. And she's really, really good at working her way to the back, man, when she does get you on the mat. With Justine Kish, she starts her UFC run good. She beats Nina Ansaroff. She beats Ashley Yoder. And I don't know if it's the injuries, and then some of the poor, fight IQ mistakes she's made. But now she's 1-3 in her last 4. I mean, that one win was against Pudialova on a big layoff for her, where she actually looked pretty decent, and has yet to live up to that performance. But with Justine Kish, man, she is a really, really physically strong woman. She throws really hard shots, but no feints to her game or anything. She loads up, really looks for the home run shot. And again, man, another fight. You hit it. You hit the nail right on the head, man. With the Fleece Herrig fight, it's spot on to how Cortez is going to be able to get this girl to the mat. I drew a ton of things from that fight as well. I'm glad to see that we're on the same page. And however you want to play Tracy Cortez, man, I'd be really comfortable with doing so.
I like hearing that.
We move on, man, to the main card where we have a really exciting fight between Ricardo Ramos, who is 14-3, taking on Bill Algeo. This is a fight I've been extremely excited for, man, since the odds opened. And I actually have a plus money ticket on Algeo, who's currently sitting at a -125. With Ricardo Ramos, he does split his time between Brazil, but he does a lot of his camps there at Team Alpha Male, and he's extremely, extremely talented BJJ black belt. One thing to note about him, though, and this is going to be the first time it seemed that he's going to be an underdog in any of his UFC fights. He's been the favorite in every one of them, and he's looked good at featherweight, but he never missed at bantamweight, man. So I'm curious as to why he moved up, as you're always trying to be the bigger of the fighters. He's looking to bounce back off that ground and pound TKO loss to Lerone Murphy, which was the second time in 4 fights this guy's been finished. So at 25, that's something I really don't like to see. He likes the spinning elbow that he TKO'd, Zahabi with. That's ultimately what led to Lerone Murphy getting him to the mat. But what I like about Ramos is when he misses, when his opponents miss, he's really good at locking up the body in some type of clinch or just wrapping you up and getting the fight where he wants. Algeo, what he has going for him, man, is a lot of size advantage in this one. He's a big featherweight and he's taking on a guy, who, in my opinion, like I said, never missing weight at bantamweight, is a true bantamweight. So he's going to have the size going for him. He's kind of got that sideways striking style like Wonder Boy. And much like Tony Gravely, a tough slate of opponents to get to the UFC, man. Jared Gordon, Shane Burgos, he goes to war with Brendan Lofton on the Contender Series. Algeo showed me good things that I like. I know the takedown defense has been pretty sus, but it's been by some real physically strong guys that I don't know if the bantamweight's going to be able to replicate. I'm going with Bill Algeo here. I think you see this one a little different.
Yeah, I definitely see this one a little different. I'm happy to see the odds going into my favor as a Ramos backer here. At only 25 years old and training at, one of the best gyms you could ask for at those lighter weight divisions in Team Alpha Male, I really do think that he's growing exponentially in each of his fights. And, you talked about his move to featherweight being a little bit questionable. It does at least help looking back on his career that he is 4-1 at featherweight. And although coming off this Lerone Murphy loss, that is, Murphy is just a physical specimen, one of the stronger guys of the division. And hopefully he can avoid running into somebody who's so physically strong in his next few fights. Ramos is excellent in the inside trips and getting underneath the arm and taking the back of his opponents. But I don't like everything, a couple of the things that he does. He tries to be a little bit too pretty, kind of those fancy shots, trying to do the spinning shit that got him in trouble with the Lerone Murphy fight and why it wound up on the ground. Just a little bit too fancy that I think will as he gets older, he'll start to kind of find his groove and kind of play it a little bit more safe. And hopefully coming off of that TKO loss, he's a little bit more focused in this fight. Bill Algeo, he likes pumping that jab and using that clean striking of his, but he does kind of lack strength. You talked about him being one of the bigger guys of the division. I kind of think that plays to his disadvantage in a lot of the times. I kind of compared him to Nate Diaz and the fact that he gets thrown around a lot. He's 6 foot tall, and when he does fight guys that are a little stockier than him, he does have trouble keeping his back off the mat. I think Ramos is technically a little bit better standing up and on the ground, and I think that he'll make him pay. Algeo, he has faced some pretty good names, but like you said, he's kind of fallen short every single time he takes that step up. Both these guys having Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. I'm not really worried about the submission or the submission at all, really. I think Ramos, if he does get on top, will be able to just kind of ride out a decision. And if it does stay on the feet, I think that he could pick him apart. He's really good at moving in and out and kind of gliding on his feet. And I really do expect to see a really good Ramos here, and one that kind of gets by Algeo relatively easy.
Nice, man. Not always do we see them the same, though. It's what makes it come interesting when we get to watch the fights together on Saturday.
I love it. Moving up a weight class, we go to the lightweight division where we see Violent Bob Ross, Luis Peña, who's 8-3, taking on 6-1 Alex Munoz. Peña's looking to bounce back from his first ever time being finished in his bout with Kama Worthy. Peña is going to be the taller, longer fighter here with 6 inches of height and 3 inches of reach. Peña is very comfortable engaging in a point fight and will likely want to keep this standing and try and pick him apart. He really enjoys trying to establish that jab early and really utilize those kicks to keep his opponent at range. That being said, he does have the ability to mix in takedowns of his own, and when he is on top, he does have that heavy top pressure that could actually be a problem for somebody who's not used to being on their back. Munoz, he's looking to pick up his first UFC win after his debut loss to Hack Parast. It's hard to gauge the level of striking you have with somebody like Hack Parast with that level of striking, but from what I did see, it really didn't look to be UFC caliber striking. He is fighting under Chris Holdsworth and Uriah Faber over there at Team Alpha Male. I know he has Cody No Love as a training partner, which is great. But, it really does seem to be that Munoz is relatively one-dimensional. And although his wrestling, it looked good early against Hakparast, it did become kind of predictable when he didn't, really set any of them up with strikes as the fight moved on. And ended up ultimately just becoming a punching bag for Hakparast as the fight progressed. I think we'll see a similar fight in Peña, and Peña being minus 140 right now, I think he's in playable range, and I'm happy that we're both actually leaning towards him.
Yeah, for sure, man. Peña first got his name there on the Ultimate Fighter when DC and Stipe were the coaches there, and actually the favorite to win the season, and gets hurt. And upon his return, they immediately match him up with the tough winner in Mike Trezano because, rightfully deserved. But that was one of the split decision losses there that, he lost. He also lost a split decision to Matt Frivola there in Tampa that we saw. We got to meet him after that. Real cool dude. But his career could be in a real different place right now. You talked about the comma worthy, winning the first two, winning every bit of the third round before the neck gets snatched up in some crazy, modified guillotine. He could be looking like a 6-0 record or something in the UFC right now. This dude's a real student of the game. Once he got off tough, immediately went to AKA with DC to work on all his skills there. Training all over the world, done his last few camps out of American Top Team. On the feet, man, real sharp hands, crisp boxing from southpaw, really well at keeping the range there, a ton of feints, and a really underrated wrestler, like you said. On Munoz, he tried his shot on the Contender Series against Nick Newell, who's the one-arm fighter, actually. Dominated decision, didn't really get the contract that night, but eventually did get the call. And, man, Nasrat really made him pay for, sloppy takedown setups and really amateur striking, like you said. Once the takedowns were stopped, Munoz really didn't have much to offer him on the feet. And come round three, the gas tank failed him, and he really was a punching bag. I would probably say Peña's a step down from Nasrat, to be honest with you. Nasrat, right there on the cusp of the top 15, but there's still a really clear striking advantage that Peña has here. Munoz is a former D1 wrestler. You talked about him working at Team Alpha Male there, but there's not a lot of 6'3" guys, at Team Alpha Male to imitate someone like Luis Peña. So I doubt he's really getting the good looks that he wants. And if Peña can stop the takedowns, like you said, I feel like he's the much better striker, and I see him taking this one probably by decision, just with Munoz being too tough to be put out of there.
Yeah, I'm glad we're both looking at that the same way.
For sure, man. We take a step up to the middleweight division where we've seen Abdul Razak Al Hassan make his return. He's 10-3, taking on Jacob Malkoun, who's 4-1. The guys at Fortis MMA, you and me both, man, the whole world thought there was an absolute killer in the making with Al Hassan at one point. The dude finished every win of his by TKO, and there was not a single one of his opponents that could even make it out of the first round with him. But now he's in a bit of a tough spot, man. He's lost his last two. He's also missed weight in his last two. But he was coming off, a 2-year layoff prior, and he was dealing with quite a bit of shit outside the octagon, with the false accusations and stuff. It really definitely took the focus away from his training. But I expect a much better showing here at middleweight. I don't expect really the gas tank to fail him the way it did in Lazez's fight. And, when you miss weight badly and Chaos Williams cracks you clean, you're going to go down there. But he's just set up to get back on track here. Man, Jacob Malkoun, second UFC appearance, and, it's obviously because of Robert Whittaker, but he's on the main card yet again for some reason. He was on a pay-per-view in his debut, and the guy, Dan, over at Best Fight Picks tweeted out yesterday that Malkoun is to Whittaker what Artem is to Connor. And that is literally spot on. Best tweet I've ever seen there. But, UFC is doing this dude again. No favors. When you're 4-0 and you're just gifted a UFC, appearance, UFC is going to just try to kill you, basically. And that's what they're doing here with Phil Hawes and now Al Hassan. Al Hassan, first round TKO all day, baby.
Yeah, I think that's the move here. For whatever reason, the odds makers are extremely fond of Al Hassan, and it's really tough to get a good price tag on him. Like, even coming off of a huge knockout loss and moving up a weight class where he's still sitting at, almost 3-1 favorite odds here. And to me, he just hasn't proven it, because anytime that we have seen him outside of that first round, it doesn't look great.
Right.
That being said, I don't think that this is a fight that does see outside of that first round. I think you touched on his TKO prop being at like plus 135 if you're doing TKO in round one. And I think that that's probably the move. As I mentioned, that 15-pound increase to 185, you got to question his cardio. Hopefully, that'll be good for his chin. Malkoon, didn't really get to see much in his debut against Haas. Really hard to kind of gauge where he's at this point in his career. Only 25 years old. It's another one of those ones where you better hope that he's progressing in each fight. From what I had saw in the Sebastian to Messi fight right before his UFC debut, he does have a decent single leg that he'll go back to, and I gotta imagine that's something that he would want to establish here early against Al Hassan. I imagine after he sees the first couple strikes, if he can survive them, he'll be dipping for that single leg pretty soon. Um, I truly think that this will be I think the under 1.5 sitting at minus 140. There's value on that if you do think that this is going to be a stand up war. Malkoon could catch the possibly chinny Al Hassan, so I could see that narrative kind of playing into mine. But I think you touched it. You hit the nail on the head. Al Hassan round one is the way to go right here.
Yeah, man, they're both coming off fights where they wwere KO'd stiff early, under 1.5 sitting minus 140. Definitely playable, but the degenerate in me will always take a Al Hassan first round TKO if you give it to me at plus money.
Yeah, I like that. We've got a great fight in the heavyweight division where we see the Pitbull Andre Arlovsky, who's 30-20, taking on the Vanilla Gorilla Chase Sherman, who's 15-6. Arlovsky is looking to bounce back from that Espino loss. He's kind of one of those veterans that you can never count out. But we've learned a similar lesson in McDessie last weekend where he took on Baja Mendez and really just gave him that vet lesson. Arlovsky is kind of one of those fighters that'll put you in that deer in a headlight type of state where his movement, his awkwardness, the timing and everything, it's enough to make you kind of second guess your attack and really just leave your opponent frozen. He's also really good at testing your cardio and drawing out those fights. Like I said, that movement and that awkward defense allows him to really draw out the fights and take his opponents into those deeper waters that they might not be used to. Chase Sherman, looked good in his UFC return. After some time spent in BKFC, his boxing actually did look to improve like dramatically. He tore up the lead leg of Ike Villanueva, and that's something that I do look for him to implement in this fight as well. And all that being said, that was all done on 6 days' notice. So I can't imagine how great Chase Sherman's going to look here at 31 years old. That's what I think is the prime of MMA in general, but especially in the heavyweight division. He's still got time to learn, in my opinion. I do think that this is quite a big jump from Parker Porter, and it might be the UFC kind of, punishing him from his run-in with USADA in these past 9 months. Chase Sherman notoriously struggles with that striking defense. His face constantly gets touched up in his fights, and that's something that I do think Arlovsky's going to take advantage of. I know you're not huge on betting the old fart in Arlovsky, but I do lean him, and I think that he's playable. But I'm also understanding and not wanting to play him.
Yeah, man, we're seeing Andre Arlovsky for the favorite for the first time, and I can't tell you how long. It seems like his last 10 fights or something like that, and I know he's won his last 2 of his last 3, fights and made him so hard to cut. But, I'm surprised to see him still on the roster. He's one of these older heavyweights, an ex-champion. He probably still makes a pretty fat little paycheck to show, We've seen him part ways with quite a few veteran heavyweights as of late. And Arlovsky, man, another one of these heavyweights that train out of ATT where he's going to get the best work with a lot of guys in his weight class. And he's been one of the UFC's most active fighters in any weight class. The dude's fought like 16 times in the last 6 years, taking on, everybody from the up-and-coming prospects to guys on their way to challenging for the belt. The deer in the headlights was a real good reference, Manny, that he's real good at like luring his opponents to sleep, countering when they come in, and he just disrupts their timing and racks up points with the leg kicks. And here recently, dragging those fights out, protecting the chin, something that he's needed to do as he's approaching his 51st fight. But Chase Sherman, man, he looked like a world beater against Ike Villanueva, looked phenomenal, looked good outside the UFC, but when he's back in the UFC, facing these higher level competition, I feel like he's just going to get pieced up again, man. He's one of these athlete football players turned fighter, just not real technical, man. And when he's in the pocket, the guy doesn't move his head at all. He really does have good knees to the body that he leads with, and he likes to use his elbows when he's in close. He's got real good speed, faster than most heavyweights. Um, we see guys who take, a week notice fights and then end up popping for weed, for steroids, for stuff. So it's not unusual to see it, but it is something you got to take note that the best performance of Chase Sherman's life, was when he was on the juice there. And I do like to play Arlovsky, especially at a minus 135. He's seen, things in his career that Chase Sherman just hasn't yet. But with 50 fights and at 42 years old, he's always been on my list of guys to fade. It's hard for me to pull the trigger, even with me seeing him as the favorite for me.
You talked about the paycheck that the UFC is shelling out each time he fights. I just looked it up. It's a little over 300,000 every time he steps out there. And you're right. He might be fighting for pink slips here. If Chase Sherman can get the dub, I wouldn't really have a reason to give the UFC to keep Arlovsky with that type of pay. And then same goes for Sherman. He's already got his second chance, and this is an obstacle that he definitely needs to overcome if he wants to be a mainstay in this division.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you. Man, we go to our co-main event in the evening, which is going to be a super fun fight, man. We have Jakar Close, who's 11-2-1, taking on Jeremy Stephens, who's 28-18. I love taping Jakar Close. It's just an excuse to watch round 2 of him and Beneil Dairouche fight. He's the fiance there of Courtney Casey, another UFC fighter. They're both always in phenomenal shape, keeping each other in check. The guy used to train out of Fight Ready, but I've heard he had the falling out with Eddie Chaw and some guys like that. So he's kind of been bouncing gyms this last year. Courtney just lost as well. He's coming off his first, knockout loss of his career as well. So, the headspace of Jakar Close is up in the air for me right now. But the dude does have a ton of forward pressure. And, as I think about it, Jakar Close is one of the first guys I remember to really attack the low leg kicks. I bring it back to the Di Casey fight, and that was years ago, but really targeting the low leg kicks and stuff. He's got an accurate right hand. But, like Connor talked about with Jose Aldo in the face-off, he almost telegraphs it. It's sitting there shaking. He wants to throw it so bad. He loads up on it a whole lot. The grappling's really become a big issue for him on the scorecards here. But with Jeremy Stephens, he's moving back up to lightweight here after missing weight against Calvin Kattar in his last performance. He's currently on the 4-fight losing streak as well and on the tail end of his career. But the guy's making his 34th, 35th UFC appearance. He's third in overall fight time for the UFC. And he's fought literally, the who's who of both divisions, whether it's, Zabit, Max, Kattar, Yair in featherweight, or if it's Pettis, Cerrone, Oliveira. I mean, he left a brutal finish over RDA at 55. Jeremy Stephens has got one of the best highlight clips that you can check out on YouTube there. He throws so heavy in every shot. It's a super close fight here, man, for me. Jakar Close is no spring chicken. I think I'm going to side with Jeremy Stephens, man, and I think he's going to touch Jakar Close's chin and put him away. I think he's going to add Jakar to the list of highlights that he's got.
Yeah, man. Another one we're just not seeing eye to eye on. Jeremy Stephens, like you said, he's nearing that 50 fight mark in his career. And at 34 years old, he really has seen a lot of abuse over the years. Yeah. Like he's been in some absolute wars. And that might be starting to take a toll on him. We saw that Calvin Kattar elbow that he ate, the Jose Aldo body rip. He has shown weaknesses in his game that I think somebody in Jakar Close, who is going to be the bigger guy stepping in here, could take advantage of. Jeremy Stephens, yes, he was an ex-lightweight, but I truly think he was a 145er at heart at all points and times. And he's at a point in his career where he's really looking for any way possible to kind of revamp his career. On this L4, it doesn't look great moving forward. And I think that he is kind of lucky getting Jakar Close, who's one of the smaller 155ers here. Jakar Close has kind of made a living on making his fights dirty and draining his opponents by forcing them up against the fence and making them work every single time that he takes them down. I think that he's going to look to engage really early here and kind of drain that power that Stephens obviously brings. I do think that Close, being the stronger opponent, will be able to hold Jeremy to the ground, and I don't think that he minds making this a shitty fight just to get the dub. This is a huge step up in Close's career, and having a third of the amount of fights that Jeremy Stephens does, I got to think that he's going to want to play this safe. Here, I think that Close is the rightful favorite, and I'm more than happy with playing him.
Nice, man. I see where you're coming from. And Jeremy Stephens, without a doubt, won round one against Cater, but I don't know if it was a weight cut or what. But the cardio, he definitely started to slow down in round two there with that massive output that he had in round one. But, if Ricardo Close looks to extend this fight, like I think 8 of his 9 UFC fights have been the distance, the longer he drags it out, I do favor him as well. Maybe look at playing him by a decision prop. But I like Jeremy Stephens, man, in the cage. His little comment at the Conor press conference may have been a little out of line, but the dude wasn't lying. He's got a nice highlight clip, and he does leave dudes in the dust when he hits you. This is a fun co-main event, man.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In our main event, we go to the middleweight division where we see Robert the Reaper Whittaker, who's 22-5, taking on Kelvin Gastelum, who's 17-6. Robert Whittaker, he's 10-1 since moving up to 185, with his only loss coming to Izzy. And honestly, just an all-around good guy, like somebody that you want to root for. If you watch any of the embeddeds or any just, video that covers his life, it's tough not to root for him. He's kind of like Jan Blachowicz in that manner. You look at his last fight against Cannonier, couple of takeaways was he still has that bounce to his game, that stabbing jab that he can hold all the way down at his hip, and that right high kick from hell that he touched up Cannonier a couple of times with. That being said, he did kind of have some trouble with figuring out how to deal with the lead leg kicks of Cannonier, and that's something that I expect Gastelum to try and implement here. He does have a hard inside low kick, and that's it's something that I think that he's going to rely on in the stand-up. I think Gastelum's striking is a little bit more technical, but I think Whittaker has the speed advantage here. Gastelum, like Joe Rogan said in his last fight, he is world-class, and he showed that in the Ian Heinisch fight where he out-grappled Ian. He was the better striker, had great takedown defense, and, that was only 2 months ago, and he looked to build off that momentum, and I guess immediately went into an 8-week camp, and here he is fighting in possibly the biggest fight of his career other than his Izzy fight against Robert Whittaker. They're both black belts in BJJ, and I think that kind of will cancel out, and we'll see a stand-up war here. I lean Whittaker here, and I think that with Whittaker being a minus 250 roughly, the only way that I'm looking to play Whittaker is by decision, because I don't think that he's going to finish somebody like Gastelum, and I do think that he's a better all-around fighter when it comes down to it.
Yeah, man, we see the fight exactly the same. This fight, like you talked about at the beginning, originally slated for UFC 234. Rob was looking to make his second defense of his middleweight title there before having to pull out with that severe injury, I think a day or two before that. But it was just 2 months later that, that we got to witness Izzy and Gastelum in one of the absolute, fight of the years for sure. One of the best fights in UFC history actually took place 2 years ago today, actually. Both of these guys are ex-welterweights, but it's without a doubt, Whittaker, who's had way more success since moving up. He's finished Tavares, Souza, and Brunson all on the feet en route to getting the belt. He's been an hour in the cage with Prime Yoel and, outclassed Till and Cannonier both on the feet, man, en route to a decision win there. And it's all before 30 years old. I don't really know if his rematch with Izzy would go much different. Izzy's a very high-level striker, but I know it's one that he's really itching, to get back because he was coming off that big layoff, from his injury. Whittaker shows great cardio, huge toughness, great durability, underrated wrestling there, and he's got just that bouncing way of getting in and out, and avoiding a lot of damage there. That's when Robert Whittaker is at his best, is when he's bouncing and fighting well behind that jab. And there's not a person that hides the head kick behind the hands as well as he does there in the middleweight division. on the side of Kelvin Gastelum, he's not in his garage anymore with his girlfriend, lifting weights for him, putting out his workout plans. He's back at Kings MMA where he is, and this is the second main event where we got a guy from Kings MMA, as a headliner there, and shit, it's actually the third out of our third main event out of the last four where we've seen middleweights headline it. Gastelum, he's got very overlooked grappling as well. We've seen him, actually go back to the grappling to beat Ian Heinisch, like you talked about. That being said, come round three, Ian Heinisch had his back for a lot of that and kind of started to come on. That leads me to think that Gastelum doesn't really have the grappling and cardio to go a full 25 up at middleweight, because I'm a firm believer that welterweight is this guy's weight class here if he could get the diet under control. And when you lose to Izzy, to Till, Hermanson, Weidman, when you have to come back to beat Tim Kennedy, and one of your best wins being Bisbing off of a 2-week KO, it really questions me for Kelvin Gastelum as to why he is still there personally, as to why he hasn't realized himself to get the diet under control and go back to welterweight. And again, I think it was like last week's main event that I talked about. Whole lot to gain for Kelvin Gastelum here. Not much to gain for Robert Whittaker after beating Till and Cannonier. It's just another fight that Rob's got to take, to get back to the title there. I agree with you at minus 250. It's hard to play Rob. I don't mind the decision prop though. I'm with you.
Here's something else to consider. I think if somebody's getting the finish, it's probably going to be Gastelum. He's shown extreme durability in his past fights, where Whittaker does have a tendency to get tagged, where we've seen him tagged in that Till fight, in the Romero fight, the Brunson fight, the Cannonier fight, and his last one in that third round. That is something to take into consideration. I think Kelvin Gastelum inside the distance is plus 300 or 400 something. And, if you did lean Gastelum, I would urge you to take Gastelum inside the distance, because I don't think he's going to outpoint somebody like Robert Whittaker.
I'm with you, man. If you're taking Kelvin, take him inside the distance here. If you lean Rob, I think the decision's the way to go, man.
100%.
That does conclude the breakdown, man, of all 13 fights here on UFC Vegas 24. You got to look through all of them, man, and pick out a fight for everybody to pay attention to. What's that one?
Pretty easy for me. It's got to be the Alexander Romanov versus Juan Espino fight. Two absolute units just going at it. Who doesn't like to see two huge heavyweights go head to head?
Yeah, man, I'm with you. That's kind of the people's main event this week for sure. All the eyes are going to be there. For me, man, the co-main event, Ricardo Close and Jeremy Stephens, is going to be an absolute brawl. I know they're both coming off, getting KO'd themselves, but neither one are the gun-type shy fighters. They're going to come there, meet in the middle, and put on a good fight for us. I'm going to go ahead and take, the fighter throughout the card that I think people need to keep their eyes on. And that's going to be Al Hassan, man. He's up a weight class. Hopefully he gets the cardio and weight under control. And there's not a better opponent that you could have spoon-fed him to get back on track with a nice first-round finish.
I like that pick. Mine's going to have to be Tracy Cortez for obvious reasons, but also because she's a 27-year-old. And like I said, she is making those huge improvements and looking to keep that momentum off the Stephanie Eggers win. I think that she has a real opportunity to showcase her skills and get another win under her belt.
Yeah, no. So for the underdog here, I think we're going to take the Bill Algeo and the Ricardo Ramos fight, because we both actually have an underdog ticket on the side that we side with there. Going to be a fun one come Saturday. I think we both agree on our best bets here as well, man. Tony Gravely, anywhere you put that guy throughout any of your bets, I think he's my lock come Saturday. What's your best bet?
Yeah, Gravely with a little bit better. My guess, Bartosz Fabinski is definitely my pick. I think he's got a little bit more of a playable price tag if you're trying to play him straight up, where, like you said, the Gravely price tag is more of a parlay piece rather than a straight bet. But both of them about as much of a lock as you can get on a fight card.
Absolutely, man. That concludes us all, man. If you're still with us, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments who you got in the main event this week. And we'll see you guys next week. Hope you're making some money with us.
Peace.